Hi, I'm Sarah Mitchell, 34, married to David for 8 years with two kids, Emma, 6, and Jake, 4. I'm a freelance graphic designer working from home, while David climbs the corporate ladder as a senior marketing manager at Pinnacle Industries. For 2 years, David has been increasingly critical of my appearance. It started with helpful gym suggestions and evolved into passive aggressive comments about how other wives maintain themselves. 3 months ago, while planning our 8th anniversary, David delivered the comment that changed everything. Sarah, I love you, but you've really let yourself go since the kids. Maybe we should postpone any big celebration until you get back to taking care of yourself. What David didn't know was that I'd been planning a surprise vow renewal dinner. What he also didn't know was that his criticism was about to backfire spectacularly in front of the person whose opinion he valued most, his boss. The criticism had been building for months, disguised as loving concern. "Have you thought about getting back to the gym?" he'd ask while I juggled client calls and homework help. "Jessica looks amazing for having 3 kids. She mentioned this new workout program." "Maybe we should update your wardrobe," he'd suggest before rare date nights. "You've been wearing the same things lately." Each comment was delivered with just enough care to make me question if I was being oversensitive. After all, shouldn't my husband want me to be healthy and happy? But the comments became more frequent and less disguised. David started making observations about other women, neighbors, coworkers' wives, celebrities, always with the subtle implication that I should aspire to their level of self-care. The breaking point came 6 months ago at a dinner party with David's colleagues. When discussing New Year's resolutions, I mentioned growing my freelance business. David laughed condescendingly. "That's great, honey, but maybe you should focus on personal goals too. Getting back to taking care of yourself like you used to." The table went silent. I felt my face flush with embarrassment. Sarah used to be really into fitness and health. I think she'd feel so much better if she got back to prioritizing that. On the drive home, I confronted him about the public humiliation. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," he said defensively. "I just think you'd be happier if you took care of yourself. Other women manage to." That phrase, "other women manage to," became his go-to response whenever I tried to explain my reality. 3 months ago, I was working on a major proposal for a Portland tech company, the kind of project that could transform my business. I was telling David about the opportunity over dinner, excited about the potential. "That's great, honey," he said, scrolling through his phone. "Just make sure you present yourself professionally." "What do you mean?" David looked up and gave me a once-over that made my stomach turn. "I mean, look the part, put together, polished. Maybe invest in professional clothes that fit properly and get your hair done." "Are you saying I don't look professional?" David sighed and put down his phone. "Sarah, I love you, but you've really let yourself go since the kids. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to help you succeed. You used to take pride in your appearance." The kitchen was silent except for the refrigerator's hum. "Maybe we should postpone any big celebration for our anniversary until you get back to taking care of yourself. I just think you'd feel more confident celebrating when you're feeling better about yourself." Something inside me shifted, not broke, but clicked into perfect alignment. "You're right," I said, calmly. "I should definitely focus on presenting my best self." David smiled, thinking he'd finally gotten through to me. "I'm glad you understand. I am only saying this because I love you." I know exactly what I need to do. What David didn't know was that his comment about postponing our anniversary had just inspired the most strategic dinner party of our marriage. Over the next week, I began planning while David congratulated himself on his productive conversation. I started paying attention to his work stories, especially about his boss, Richard Hayes. Richard was everything David desperately wanted to impress. 52, married to college sweetheart Linda for 28 years, father of 3 successful children, and known for his old-school values about family and respect. David frequently quoted Richard's opinions about work-life balance and supporting spouses. Richard always says Linda is the smartest person he knows. David had told me multiple times. He credits her with every major career decision. Richard thinks men who don't support their wives are insecure and small, David had mentioned after a company retreat. He says a real man makes his wife feel more beautiful and confident, not less. David respected Richard's opinions on everything. Richard's approval meant everything to David's career and self-image, which made Richard Hayes the perfect person to witness David's true character. I planned an intimate vow renewal dinner at our home for our anniversary. The guest list was small but strategic. Our parents, 2 closest couple friends, and, as a special surprise, Richard and Linda Hayes. I contacted Richard's assistant, explaining that David had been working so hard lately that I wanted to show my gratitude by hosting a surprise appreciation dinner with people who meant the most to him professionally and personally. Richard was touched and immediately accepted. His assistant mentioned that Linda was excited to finally meet the wife David speaks about so fondly. For 6 weeks, I prepared with the intensity of a major client presentation. I booked the salon appointments David had suggested, bought new clothes, even hired a personal trainer. Not because David was right, but because I wanted to look absolutely stunning when I exposed his character to the man whose respect he craved most. On anniversary evening, our home looked magazine perfect. When I came downstairs in my new navy dress, David's reaction was predictable. "Wow, you look incredible. See, I told you that you'd feel better about yourself if you put in some effort." "Thank you," I said, simply, not engaging with his implication. Our parents and friends arrived first, followed by Richard and Linda. When they walked in, David's confusion was immediate. "Richard, what a surprise! Sarah, you didn't tell me you invited Richard and Linda." "I wanted it to be a surprise," I smiled. "You speak so highly of Richard. I thought it would be meaningful to have him celebrate with us." Richard shook David's hand warmly. "Your wife is extraordinary, David. When she invited us, I was impressed by her thoughtfulness and obvious pride in your work." Linda embraced me like an old friend. "I've been looking forward to meeting you. Richard comes home with stories about David's talent, but he always mentions how proud David is of his accomplished wife." I saw David's face flush. Apparently, he presented himself very differently at work. Dinner was perfectly executed. I was an engaging hostess, and Linda and I connected immediately over balancing careers with family life. She was fascinated by my design business and asked intelligent questions about my clients and growth plans. "Sarah, your work sounds incredibly challenging and rewarding," Linda said during the main course. "Richard always talks about how important it is for couples to support each other's professional ambitions." "Absolutely," Richard agreed. "I tell my team that a man's job is to make his wife feel more capable and confident, not less. A woman who feels supported at home can accomplish anything professionally." David nodded along, playing supportive husband while I watched carefully. "David is very encouraging," I said diplomatically. "He always has opinions about how I can improve." "That's wonderful," Linda said. "Though after 28 years, I've learned that the best husbands know when to offer advice and when to simply offer appreciation." Richard nodded. "I can always tell which men in our office are secure in their marriages. They're the ones who talk about their wives with genuine pride and admiration." "David definitely does that," I said.
setting up my moment. He's always telling me about other women and what I could learn from them. The table went quiet. Linda looked confused. Richard raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Linda asked.
"Oh, I said casually. David is very observant about what makes women successful and attractive. He's always pointing out other wives who manage to balance everything better than I do." David's face was turning red. "Sarah, I don't think—" Just last week, David was telling me about Amanda from Mike's office. He was impressed with how she manages to look so good despite having children. He thought I could learn from her approach. Mike looked uncomfortable. Jessica looked shocked. Richard and Linda looked appalled. "David also has great insights about professional presentation," I continued. "He recently explained that I've let myself go since having children and needed to get back to taking care of myself before we could properly celebrate our anniversary." The silence was deafening. "That's why I thought it was important to have Richard and Linda here tonight," I said, looking directly at David. "David respects your opinions so much, Richard. I thought you could help him understand whether his approach to supporting his wife aligns with your philosophy about successful marriages." Richard's voice was controlled but cold. "David, is Sarah accurately representing conversations you've had?" David was trapped. Denying it would mean calling his wife a liar. Confirming it would reveal himself as the kind of man Richard despised. I think there might be some misunderstanding," he stammered. "I was trying to be supportive. By telling her she's let herself go? By pointing out other women she should emulate?" David looked around the table at faces seeing him clearly for the first time. "I was trying to help," he said weakly. "Help with what?" Richard asked. "Help her understand that her husband doesn't appreciate her? Help her feel inadequate while raising your children and building a business?" The dinner ended early. Before leaving, Linda pulled me aside. "Sarah, you are remarkable, intelligent, accomplished, beautiful, and clearly a wonderful mother. Any man would be lucky to have you as a wife." "If he doesn't remember that," Linda said firmly, "then he doesn't deserve you." Richard's farewell to David was notably cool. "David, I think you have some reflecting to do about what kind of husband you want to be." After everyone left, David and I sat in our living room. "Why did you do that?" David asked. "Do what? Host a dinner where you could meet Linda and Richard? Share our marriage honestly with people whose opinions matter to you? You made me look bad in front of my boss." "I didn't make you look any way, David. I simply repeated things you've said and asked for their perspectives." "I never meant to make you feel bad," he said finally. "But you did, repeatedly, and apparently you present yourself completely differently to colleagues than to your wife." "I do respect you," David protested. "David, my best self is exactly who I was tonight. Confident, successful, intelligent, and beautiful. The question is whether you can learn to see that or whether you'll continue trying to change me into someone else." "Richard told me he was deeply disappointed in how I spoke about you," David explained that evening. "He said men who diminish their wives are insecure and weak, and that he's questioning whether I have what it takes for leadership positions." The professional consequences were immediate and lasting. David was passed over for a promotion he'd been expecting, and Richard made it clear that David's advancement would depend on demonstrating growth in character, not just competence. David started therapy and began genuine self-reflection. "I felt threatened by your success," he admitted during one of our difficult conversations. "When you started getting bigger clients and making more money, I felt like I was losing control. Criticizing your appearance was a way to make you need my approval." It was the first time David acknowledged that his behavior stemmed from his own insecurity, rather than my shortcomings.
His therapist helped him understand that he'd absorbed patterns from his own father, who had treated his David's mother with similar dismissive criticism. More importantly, I reclaimed my self-worth and established clear boundaries. I will not tolerate comments about my appearance, comparisons to other women, or pretending your criticism is helpful when it's destructive. The dynamic shift was dramatic. David no longer felt entitled to critique my choices, and I no longer felt obligated to accept his criticism gracefully. When he occasionally slipped back into old patterns, I addressed it immediately. That comment was inappropriate and hurtful. I'd say calmly, "Would you like to rephrase it, or should we end this conversation?" My business has thrived since I stopped allowing David to undermine my confidence. The tech company proposal led to a 6-figure contract and several referrals. I've hired an assistant and am considering expanding into brand consulting. At work, David has had to rebuild his reputation with Richard, who continues to evaluate David's character based on how he treats his family. David now speaks about me with genuine pride and respect, partly because that's what Richard expects, but increasingly because that's how he's learning to actually see me. Our children have noticed the change too. Emma recently told me, "Daddy talks about you the way he talks about his work, like you're really good at what you do." It was a reminder that children absorb everything, and that the respect between parents shapes their understanding of relationships. The ripple effects extended beyond our immediate family. Linda Hayes became an unexpected mentor and friend. She reached out a week after the dinner to invite me for coffee, and we've maintained a relationship that's been invaluable for both my personal growth and business development. That dinner took courage, Linda told me during one of our monthly coffee meetings. I've seen too many women accept diminishment because they think it's easier than confrontation. You showed Sarah that standing up for yourself doesn't destroy relationships, it transforms them. Through Linda, I've been introduced to a network of accomplished women who faced similar challenges in their marriages and careers. These connections have led to new clients, collaborative projects, and a support system I never knew I needed. Richard's influence on David has been equally profound. Beyond the professional consequences, Richard has become an informal mentor, helping David understand what genuine partnership looks like. They have monthly lunch meetings where Richard shares insights about building a marriage based on mutual respect rather than control. Richard told me something that stuck. David shared after one of these lunches. He said that weak men try to make their wives smaller to feel bigger, but strong men help their wives grow because they're secure enough to celebrate someone else's success. The transformation hasn't been without challenges. David's family was initially critical of the changes, particularly his mother, who felt that I was making demands and that David was being controlled. But David surprised me when he defended our new dynamic. "Mom," he told her firmly during a family dinner, "Sarah isn't controlling me. She's holding me accountable for being the husband I promised to be when we got married." Even our social circles shifted. Some couple friends who had normalized similar dynamics in their own marriages began questioning their relationships after witnessing our transformation. 2 couples we're close with started their own therapy after seeing how much happier David and I became when we addressed our issues directly. The professional impact on my career has been extraordinary. Word spread through Linda's network about the woman who had strategically exposed her husband's behavior while maintaining grace and composure. I received inquiries from 3 major corporations whose female executives had heard the story and wanted to work with someone who embodied such confidence and strategic thinking. "I want my brand represented by someone who knows her worth," explained Maria Santos, the CEO of a sustainable fashion company that became my largest client. "What you did at that dinner showed exactly the kind of backbone and intelligence we want associated with our company." The incident even influenced how I approach my work. I now specifically seek out clients who value authenticity and respect in their business practices. My portfolio has shifted toward companies led by women or organizations with strong commitments to workplace equality. The financial benefits have been significant, but more importantly, I wake up excited about the projects I'm working on. David's journey has been equally transformative professionally. After the initial setback, he threw himself into becoming the kind of leader Richard wanted to promote. He attended workshops on emotional intelligence, started mentoring junior employees, and began advocating for work-life balance policies at Pinnacle Industries.
Your dinner was a wake-up call that went beyond our marriage, David told me recently. It made me realize that if I was treating my wife poorly, I was probably treating other people poorly too. I had to examine everything about how I interact with people. His efforts paid off. Last month, Richard promoted David to regional director, telling him privately that the growth in character he demonstrated over the past year was exactly what the company needed in leadership. The dinner that almost didn't happen because I had let myself go became the catalyst for both of us becoming the people we were always capable of being. I often think about alternate timelines where I had simply accepted David's criticism, made the changes he suggested, and never challenged the dynamic. In that timeline, David never learned to see me clearly. I never reclaimed my confidence, and our children grew up thinking that love meant accepting diminishment. Instead, they're growing up in a home where both parents support each other's ambitions, where respect is non-negotiable, and where standing up for yourself is seen as an act of love, for yourself and for the people who claim to love you. The woman who hosted that anniversary dinner was always there. I had just forgotten her temporarily under the weight of constant criticism. When David told me I had let myself go, he thought he was motivating me to meet his standards. Instead, he motivated me to show him exactly who I was when I stopped caring about standards designed to keep me small. The dinner wasn't revenge, it was revelation, an opportunity for David to see himself through eyes he respected, and for me to see myself through eyes that appreciated my worth. I had never let myself go. I had simply let myself be diminished by someone who was supposed to build me up. That realization changed everything. If this story shocked you, just wait for what's next. Leave a comment, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and of course, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a single notification.